genocide is genocide. There's no hiding it. The Myanmar authorities have targeted women, they've targeted babies, they've targeted unarmed civilian men.
Since the 5th of September, there have been no armed clashes and there have been no clearance operations.
This is about justice, and this is about fighting the cause of humanity.
Aboubacarr Tambadou has been hailed as the man who's taken on Aung San Suu Kyi. Gambia's Justice Minister and Attorney General has filed a case at the UN's highest court, accusing Myanmar of committing genocide against the Rohingya. It's the first international legal challenge against Myanmar. I'm Shamim Chowdhury and I spoke to Aboubacarr Tambadou one-on-one. Honourable Justice Minister, the question on everyone's lips, why Gambia?
Well, it's the same question I say to everyone. Why not Gambia? And Gambia is a state party to the 1948 Genocide Convention, like all other 148 members to the convention. The Gambia has its responsibilities and obligations under the convention, and we believe that we should fulfill those obligations irrespective of whether there are others who have or have not fulfilled theirs. And so the Gambia is concerned only of its own responsibilities. And that is why it is Gambia that has decided to bring this action against Myanmar, of course with the support of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, which established the Ad hoc Ministerial Committee on Accountability for Human Rights Violations against the Rohingya, and which unanimously elected the Gambia as chair of this committee. And in our function as chair, we looked at the various options that were available, the legal options, and we decided as a first initial step to come to the International Court of Justice to assert our rights under the convention.
But you have been hailed as the man taking on Aung San Suu Kyi. Is this personal?
Well, this case is neither about me nor about Aung San Suu Kyi, nor about the Gambia nor Myanmar. This case is about the Rohingya and the plight of the Rohingya and their suffering and their pain and their sorrows. I think this is about what the world should do about the Rohingya, how we should, as an international community, stop the commission of genocide against the Rohingya, how we can help the Rohingya live a decent and dignified life in freedom and peace. So this has nothing to do with either me or Aung San Suu Kyi as such. It is, the focus really should be on the Rohingya and their plight.
Now, I know that you travelled down to Cox's Bazar in southern Bangladesh some time back, and you are reported to have said that you saw genocide written on the faces of the Rohingya. How do you see genocide on the faces of the Rohingya? What did you experience and how did that make you feel?
Well, I have spent almost a decade and a half of my life prosecuting the crime of genocide, interacting with witnesses, with victims and perpetrators. I have seen crime scenes, crime sites in Rwanda. I have been to every part of Rwanda almost during those decade and a half. And I have met with hundreds, if not thousands, of victims of genocide. And so when I visited Cox's Bazar as part of a delegation of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation during the 45th Council of Foreign Ministers meeting in Dhaka, Bangladesh, we interacted with the refugees who were at the camp at Cox's Bazar. And as I sat there and listened to their stories, stories of the organized and systematic mass killings, of mass rape, of torture, of babies being thrown alive in fires. It brought back memories of the 1994 Rwandan genocide. I have heard it all before. I have seen it all before. And I could tell the striking similarities between the modes of operation and the nature of the crimes that were being committed against the Rohingya. And I knew from that experience alone that this was genocide. But obviously I have had to look at the report of the United Nations fact-finding mission as well as the report of the Special Rapporteur. And both reports confirmed my suspicions that there was genocidal intent all over the crimes in Rakhine State. And so yes, that was the belief that I had, and having researched more about this, having had more testimonies, I am now convinced more than ever before that what is ongoing in Myanmar against the Rohingya is genocide.
You said that you saw the hallmarks of similar tactics through your experiences in Rwanda. Can you tell me some of those tactics are?
Well, the first thing that I noticed from my interaction with the refugees is that there was, or is rather, a campaign of dehumanization of the Rohingya. I think from my experience, for genocide to occur anywhere, two things must be present. I'm not now talking about the elements of the crimes, I'm talking about in terms of the generality of the act of genocide. There has to be a dehumanization of the other. Every genocide in history has had that element. And that's probably simply because as human beings, we get a sense of guilt when we kill our fellow human beings who have done no wrong to us. It weighs on our conscience. And for us to get over that human obstacle that prevents us, that jolts our conscience against certain actions, what we do is we engage in an indoctrination process where we view the other not as human beings, but as something else, less insects, animals. And that process takes years to be ingrained in the psychology of the perpetrator of genocide. And I saw that in Rwanda. I saw again that at the camp when I interacted with the refugees. That's just one of the elements that I saw there. And the second one is that dehumanization has actually enabled Myanmar authorities with their civilian collaborators to engage in the kind of violent acts of murder, of killing little babies. It takes a lot to slit the throat of babies or to throw babies alive in in fires. So these are the kinds of acts that led me to view the striking similarities between the two genocides in Rwanda and in Rakhine State.
Myanmar's government has been maintaining that it was not genocide, that it was a clearance operation as it describes it, targeting terrorists specifically. What is your response to that?
Well, I have never seen in the history of genocide where the perpetrators come and readily admit that they have committed genocide. There is always a defense that they put out there. Notwithstanding that defense, I think we are intelligent enough to look beyond the rhetoric, beyond what they claim to be their defense, and see the facts for what they are. If people are being targeted, how can they ever justify the killing of little babies? Where is the justification for that? I mean, genocide is genocide. There's no hiding it. And what we have seen from the evidence that has been shared across the world is that the Myanmar authorities have targeted women, they've targeted babies, they've targeted unarmed civilian men with a view to destroying them as a group. They have expressed that desire to destroy them and to remove them from Myanmar territory. All those are indicators of genocidal intent.
You said that the Gambia has filed this case on behalf of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation. How did you manage to convince 57 member countries that this is what you wanted to do, and how supportive have these countries been?
Well, every cause generates its own support. I think when I visited Cox's Bazar and we came back to Dhaka, and the idea came to me to propose a resolution by the Gambia to establish this ad hoc ministerial committee on accountability. It received unanimous support, and that's because unanimous support at the OIC Council of Foreign Ministers meeting, because the OIC recognizes that in addition to its diplomatic and political efforts, that perhaps it was about time to also open another front in this Myanmar issue, and that is the legal front. And now that they have had concrete proposal on the table, and I guess they trusted me, having regard to my background, it was not so difficult. So the OIC unanimously adopted that resolution and further unanimously elected me as chair of this ad hoc ministerial committee.
The OIC is made up of some very powerful countries, with all due respect, many would say far more powerful than the Gambia. But has it not crossed your mind at any stage that some of these countries could have taken the lead instead of your country?
Well, it goes back to my first response to you. Many countries could have taken the lead, certainly. And the Gambia is one of them. And the Gambia just happens to take the lead on this occasion. And as international law is not the exclusive preserve of the rich and powerful countries. I think it is in the interest of all states, big or small, to ensure respect for an international rule of law system, because international law is here to serve all states. And the Gambia is a member of the international community, and the Gambia is a signatory, a state party to the Genocide Convention, so why not the Gambia? We don't have to wait for other countries to take the lead. This is not about economic or military power. This is about what is right. This is about justice, and this is about fighting the cause of humanity.
Of course, and it should never be about personal ambitions of any particular country. Yes, no, I think most people would agree with that. But the Gambia was due to host this year's OIC summit, but that didn't transpire. Is this something your country regrets?
Well, no, not at all. As you probably know, the Gambia is coming out of 22 years of a brutal dictatorship. We have had a change of government towards the end of 2016, early 2017. We basically inherited a country that was bankrupt, with no functioning institutions as such, and so we've had to rebuild. We are in the process of rebuilding our country, rebuilding our economy, rebuilding our state institutions, and for us to take the responsibility of hosting the OIC summit with the demands of such a summit would have been extremely challenging for us as a country. Hence the reason we decided to defer our hosting of the summit to a later time, to the subsequent OIC summit, so that it will give us time to prepare ourselves and to ensure that we have a successful summit, not just for the Gambia, but for the entire Muslim Ummah.
And that decision has no bearing on the stand that you've taken against the Rohingya? Would you say these are completely separate issues?
Well, they are interlinked, because the OIC, the Gambia has the backing of the OIC. It is the OIC resolution that established the ministerial committee that elected the Gambia as chair. It is the OIC resolutions at the 46th Council of Foreign Ministers meeting in Abu Dhabi that reiterated the need for a legal process to be embarked upon. It is the OIC summit in Mecca earlier this year, which again encouraged the Gambia to take up this case. So I think these are all linked. It is a continuum. They are complementary. The OIC is recognizing the Gambia's leadership in terms of this case, and the fact that the Gambia will be hosting this summit will, I guess, further reinforce that position.
Just going back to the hearing at the ICJ, in the first instance, the Gambia, on behalf of the OIC, is asking for provisional measures, and that is an immediate halt to the continuing genocide inside Myanmar. How confident are you that the judges will rule in your favour?
Well, we are very confident in our case. We have laid out the facts bare for the court today, We know that the court has issued provisional measures in other cases, and if you compare the facts of those cases and the facts that we presented today, ours is much stronger. And we have complete faith in the ability of the International Court of Justice to do the right thing. What we're asking for is the court to act to save lives. That is what we're asking for. We're not asking for some economic benefit or anything like that. What we're asking for is for the court to tell Myanmar to stop its operations that is leading to the deaths of thousands of men, women, and children. It is the least that the court can do while it considers further the merits of the Gambia's case. I have every confidence that the court will grant the provisional measures requested by the Gambia.
In the event that Myanmar doesn't honour a ruling that should be in your favour, what happens next?
Well, I have every confidence that Myanmar will honour the court's decision. They will abide by whatever decision the court makes.
But do you not think it's slightly problematic if the court rules that Myanmar should stop committing genocide, but Myanmar is not admitting or recognising that it's committing genocide?
Well, what we're asking the court to do for now is to ask Myanmar to stop activities that is leading to further violence being perpetrated, and it is that violence which we have characterized as genocide. So Myanmar is conducting operations in the area, and under the cloud of those operations, genocide is being committed. And so what we're asking the court to do is to ask Myanmar to, in the first place, stop those operations which is being used as cover to commit this genocide, and to preserve evidence in the event that the evidence will be used to identify perpetrators and crime scenes. So going back to the earlier question as to whether Myanmar will abide by the court's decisions, I think they will. I think the fact that Myanmar has presented itself before the court following the Gambia's filing of the case, the fact that very senior members of the government have taken it upon themselves to appear at the ICJ in response to the case shows that Myanmar is acting as a responsible member of the international community insofar as this case is concerned. And I believe that given their responsible attitude in this case, that they will abide by any decision that the court makes as a result of that attitude.
And I think what most supporters of the Rohingya cause would ultimately like to see are criminal prosecutions, individuals prosecuted for their part in the atrocities over the past few years, longer in fact. Do you think there's a likelihood that that may happen at some stage?
Well, I don't want to speak too much about individual criminal responsibility at this stage. What the Gambia is concerned about is the responsibility of Myanmar as a state party to the Genocide Convention. So the Gambia is focused on state responsibility. However, I am also aware that the International Criminal Court has been, the Office of the Prosecutor has been allowed to open investigations into crimes linked to Myanmar's activities insofar as they relate to the to events in Bangladesh, because Myanmar is not a state party to the Rome Statute, Bangladesh is. And so criminal investigations have been initiated or will be initiated in that regard, and let's see how that evolves.
To what extent do you hold Aung San Suu Kyi personally responsible for the events in Rakhine State?
In terms of what Aung San Suu Kyi represents in this case, I mean, here is a woman who has won the admiration and respect of the world, including myself, who has been a source of inspiration for those who are oppressed around the world. She has stood for justice, for human rights, for respect for the rule of law, and really was a symbol of the resistance against oppressive rule. I realize now how she is now representing everything that is against those values. Everything that she has ever stood for is represented in a different way, not in the same way that she was held in high esteem for. And that is regrettable.
Now, you are being very positive and you are confident, as you said, that that Myanmar will abide by the ruling of the ICJ, were it to rule in your favour. In the event that it doesn't, then my understanding is it can go to the Security Council. But of course, China is a permanent member of the Security Council. So even if the other members were to vote for tougher action, say, against Myanmar, there's every chance that it would be vetoed. So, I mean, this is something that could happen in theory.
Well, I do not want to speculate about what could or could not happen in the future. I think we take it one step at a time. We are before the ICJ. We are asking for provisional measures. Let's see what the court decides first and how Myanmar reacts to the court's decision before we think ahead of ourselves.
Okay, well, I just want to go back to something that you touched on earlier, and that is decades of corruption in the Gambia and the impact that it had on you in terms of your career and this mission that you have been pursuing. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Well, not only corruption, but oppression in particular. We have lived through 22 years, over 2 decades of a brutal dictatorship where as we are finding out now through a truth commission that we established, the extent, nature and gravity of the crimes are being unearthed, of murder, systematic murder, of political opponents, perceived or real, the torture, the rape, a lot of sexual violence, things that ordinary Gambians would not have believed. We are emerging from that legacy. We are establishing mechanisms to unearth those crimes with a view to dealing with them in a way that will prevent them from reoccurring. And that is why we are involved in a transitional justice process in the Gambia. And we have established a truth commission, as I said, which is investigating these human rights violations. We have established a constitutional review commission to draft and promulgate a new constitution for the Gambia. We've established a national human rights commission. We've established a commission of inquiry to look into the corrupt practices of the former president and his government. So we are engaged in a series of activities that will help us transform our country and help us transition from a dictatorship to a democracy going forward.
So you're confident that the bad days in the Gambia are in the past?
Oh, absolutely. They are in the past. We shall never go back to those days again. That's our belief, that's our ambition, that's our objective.
And finally, Honourable Justice Minister, I just want to ask you about the Gambia's relationship with Turkey. It is a fruitful and positive relationship. And on the issue of Rohingya, you're very much singing from the same hymn sheet, as we say. Turkey was, of course, one of the first countries to offer extensive humanitarian aid in the camps in southern Bangladesh, and it is continuing to do so. Are you hopeful that Gambia's relationship with Turkey, particularly on this issue, will continue?
Well, the first thing to say is that at the state-to-state level, Gambia has had an excellent relationship with Turkey over the years. Just before I traveled here to The Hague, the Turkish ambassador to the Gambia, Ambassador Youssef, came to say goodbye to me. Turkey is one of the first countries to come to the assistance of the Ministry of Justice. My ministry is at the heart of this transitional justice process in the Gambia. I am responsible for all these key activities in relation to the transitional justice. But when we came in, as I said, we found a country where there were no functional institutions, our economy was down, and upon my pleas for support, Turkey was one of the very first countries to provide support to my ministry, and we are forever grateful for that. It enabled us embark very quickly on some of the quick impact activities that we could have, that we undertook at the time, and that was particularly important. You have to put it in context, because after the change there was too much expectation. In terms of Turkey's role at the OIC, especially with respect to this case, Turkey has been extremely supportive. They are one of the strongest supporters of the Gambia in this endeavor. And I will take this opportunity to reiterate our gratitude to the government and people of Turkey, particularly to His Excellency President Erdogan, for making the resources of Turkey and through his Minister of Foreign Affairs, all the assistance that the Gambia is getting from them in this case. They have provided us with political support, with diplomatic support, and they have committed to furthering that support in all ways that they can.
Honourable Justice Minister Aboubacarr Tambadou, thank you very much for talking to TRT World.
Thank you, it is my pleasure.